My beloved child, listen closely, because something happened to your soulmate today that changed the way they see everything between you. It began like an ordinary moment, the kind that should have passed without leaving a mark, but then something unexpected brought you directly into their thoughts. And this time, they could not simply push the feeling aside. A conversation, a memory, and one surprising realization came together at exactly the same moment. Suddenly, things they had misunderstood about you started making sense. Your silence looked different. Your patience looked different. Even certain moments from the past seemed to carry a meaning they had completely missed before. But here is where this becomes extraordinary. They realized that what they thought they knew about your connection may have been only half the story. Don't skip, because what happened next is the reason they want to tell you about today themselves. For a few moments, they simply sat with the realization, replaying details they had ignored before. Why did your name keep returning to their mind at precisely the moments when they were questioning what truly mattered? Why did one simple reminder of you suddenly feel more important than all the noise surrounding them? They tried to explain it logically, but one truth kept rising above every explanation: you had affected their life more deeply than they had admitted. And once they recognized that, another question appeared: what if they had waited too long to say what they really wanted to say? Stay till the end, because the biggest surprise is not that they thought about you today. It is what they discovered while doing it. Something reminded them of a moment when you could have responded differently, walked away emotionally, or stopped caring, but instead, you showed a kind of patience they did not fully understand at the time. Today, that memory returned with completely new meaning. They began connecting small pieces: something you once said, something you deliberately left unsaid, and a decision you made that seemed insignificant then. Suddenly, those pieces formed a picture they had never seen before. They realized you may have understood them during a time when they did not even understand themselves. That realization stayed with them. And then came the twist they never expected. Someone said something today that accidentally confirmed what they had already started feeling. It was not some dramatic announcement. It was one simple observation about choices, timing, and the people who remain meaningful even when life becomes complicated. Your soulmate immediately thought of you. That was the moment everything shifted. They started wondering whether some connections become clearer only after enough time has passed for both people to see them differently. Don't skip now, because something huge is waiting for you, and it begins with the decision they quietly made after that conversation ended. They decided they do not want another important truth between you to remain buried beneath assumptions. That does not mean they suddenly have every answer. It means something more meaningful: they are finally willing to look at what happened between you without pretending it meant less than it did. And what they want to tell you could surprise you, because it is not simply about missing someone or remembering the past. It is about what they learned today. They realized that their next chapter cannot be built by endlessly avoiding the conversations that matter. They began imagining what would happen if they finally spoke clearly, without confusion, without pretending, without hiding behind perfect timing. What if one truthful conversation could change the direction of everything that follows? Stay a little longer, because there is one detail from today that they have not been able to forget. Just before this realization became impossible to ignore, they encountered something connected to you that they had not expected to see. For a moment, everything around them seemed less important. And then a thought arrived with startling clarity: there is something they deserve to know. That is why today matters. That is why this moment feels different. And that is why what comes next may completely change what you thought was happening behind their silence, because the most surprising part of what happened today has not been revealed yet. Now comes the moment your soulmate never expected to reach today, because after everything they remembered, one realization became impossible to ignore: they had been asking the wrong question all along. They kept wondering whether enough time had passed, whether circumstances were perfect, whether speaking now would change anything, but suddenly another question replaced all of them: what happens if I never say what I truly understood? That question stayed with them. Don't skip, because this is where today's unexpected event begins connecting directly to their next move. Your soulmate looked back at everything they had been avoiding and realized silence had created its own story between you, a story filled with assumptions neither of you may have chosen. And today, for the first time, they imagined replacing those assumptions with clarity. Something huge is waiting for you, because they are no longer thinking only about what happened between you. They are thinking about what could happen next. One possibility keeps returning to their mind. Reaching out differently than before, not with confusing signals or unfinished words, but with something simple and genuine. Yet there is one reason they have hesitated, and surprisingly, it is not because they have nothing to say. It is because they have more to say than they know how to fit into one conversation. Stay till the end, because another piece suddenly fell into place. Your soulmate remembered a choice they once made when they believed distance would make everything easier. At the time, that choice seemed logical. Today, however, they looked at it from a completely different angle. Distance may have quieted the situation, but it never answered the questions underneath it. And then something almost unbelievable happened. A tiny coincidence brought back a specific memory of you at exactly the moment they were thinking about their future. Nothing magical needs to be assumed about that coincidence. The power was in what it made them realize. They noticed that when they pictured the person they could speak to without pretending to have everything figured out, your presence appeared in that picture. When they imagined being truly understood, another memory of you surfaced. When they asked themselves which unfinished conversation still mattered, once again, there you were. Don't skip now. Your soulmate started understanding that today was not asking them to chase the past. It was challenging them to become more honest about the present. And that distinction changed everything. But the biggest surprise is still ahead, because the choice they thought was settled involved their direction from this point forward. They had been preparing themselves to continue as though nothing needed to be clarified between you. After today, that plan suddenly feels incomplete. Something huge is waiting for you, because they are considering doing the one thing they repeatedly postponed, telling you exactly what changed inside their understanding. Not promising a perfect ending. Not pretending every question has disappeared. Simply telling the truth about what today revealed. And there is one sentence they keep mentally rewriting because they want you to understand it correctly. It begins with the truth that they misread something important about you. But what comes after that is what could change the entire story. They finally recognized why one particular thing you did mattered so much, and once they understood it, they could no longer look at your connection the same way. Stay with this, because the next revelation is the one they have been struggling to put into words, and it explains exactly why what happened today made them reconsider a decision they thought they would never question again. Something shifted today that your soulmate can no longer explain away, and this is where the story becomes far more surprising than they expected. That unexpected reminder of you was not important because of what it was important because of what it made them remember. A detail from the past suddenly returned with incredible clarity, something they had overlooked because they never understood its meaning at the time. Now they do. They remembered the way you responded during a moment when everything could have become complicated, and for the first time, they considered what your response might actually have meant. You were not trying to prove anything. You were not demanding to be understood. There was simply something genuine in the way you handled that moment, and today they finally recognized it. Don't skip, because that realization opened another door. Your soulmate began questioning their own assumptions. What else had they misunderstood? What other signs had been sitting directly in front of them while they were too distracted to notice? Then one particular memory surfaced, and this one stopped them completely. Something you once said suddenly sounded different in their mind today. The words had not changed, but they had. And sometimes that changes everything. Stay till the end, because what happened afterward is the part they desperately want you to understand. Your soulmate started mentally returning to the moments between you that seemed unfinished. Not because they wanted to live in the past, but because they finally saw a pattern connecting those moments. Every time they had almost convinced themselves that your connection meant nothing extraordinary, something reminded them that the story never felt completely finished. Today, however, they stopped running from that question and faced it directly. What if the reason they could never completely close this chapter was because there was still something important left unsaid? That thought surprised them. But another realization followed almost immediately. They understood that waiting for a flawless moment had become an excuse for saying nothing at all. And suddenly they did not want silence deciding the future for them anymore. Something huge is waiting for you, because this was not merely an emotional moment that disappeared 5 minutes later. They made a quiet decision. Before circumstances change again, they want you to know what they finally understand about you, about themselves, and about the strange sequence of events that brought your name back into focus today. But here comes the detail that changes the entire direction of this story. Your soulmate originally thought the unexpected event today was showing them something about you. Slowly, they realized it was revealing something about themselves. They discovered that beneath all their questions was one truth they had avoided admitting: your presence had influenced the way they think about connection, trust, timing, and what they genuinely want moving forward. And now they are looking toward the future differently. Imagine two paths stretching forward. One where everything remains unspoken, and another where one honest conversation finally clears away months of uncertainty. Today, they realized which path they would regret not exploring. Don't skip what comes next, because there is still one missing piece. During everything that happened today, your soulmate learned something they were never expecting to learn, and it involves a choice they thought had already been settled. That choice may not be settled anymore. Tonight, one question keeps returning to them: what if I finally say everything? And the answer forming inside them is changing faster than they expected. The next thing they want to reveal is not about what happened yesterday. It is about what they are considering doing next, and once you hear why, the entire meaning of today may suddenly become clear. Here is where everything your soulmate discovered today suddenly takes on a completely different meaning, because the decision they started questioning was not small. For a long time, they had convinced themselves that the safest thing was to leave certain feelings, questions, and unfinished conversations exactly where they were. No explanation. No reopening anything. Just keep moving forward and assume that whatever was meant to be understood would somehow become clear on its own. But today challenged that entire belief. Don't skip, because one thought struck them harder than everything else: silence does not always create clarity, sometimes it simply leaves two people guessing. And your soulmates suddenly wondered how much of your story together had been shaped by things neither of you actually said. They remembered moments when they interpreted your quietness one way, your patience another way, your distance another way. Today, they considered an entirely different possibility. What if some of those interpretations had been wrong? What if they had built conclusions around incomplete information? That possibility opened a door they thought they had permanently closed. Something huge is waiting for you, because once that door opened, they could not stop themselves from asking one more question: if I finally knew the truth, would I still make the same decision? And for the first time, their answer was no longer certain. Stay till the end, because the surprising part is what happened when they mentally replayed one specific moment between you. They suddenly noticed something they had missed completely before. You had given them space when you could have pushed for answers. You had allowed something to unfold naturally instead of forcing it into the shape you wanted. Back then, your soulmate may have mistaken that for indifference. Today, they saw another possibility. Perhaps it was respect. That single shift in perspective changed the emotional meaning of the memory. Then another memory followed. And another. Pieces that once seemed disconnected began forming a pattern, and your soulmate realized that their understanding of you might have been built from only fragments of the full picture. Don't skip now, because this is the point where curiosity became intention. They no longer wanted to keep guessing what you meant. They wanted clarity. They wanted to understand whether the things they had finally recognized were real or simply conclusions created by too much time apart. And somewhere inside that uncertainty, a bold thought appeared: maybe the only way to know is to finally have the conversation they kept postponing. But there is still one revelation they have not fully processed, and this may be the most surprising part of everything that happened today. Your soulmate realized they were not only afraid of getting the answer wrong, they were afraid that the answer might change everything they had planned next. Because if their new understanding of you is correct, then one future they had been preparing for may no longer feel like the only future available. Something huge is waiting for you. They are beginning to see that clarity does not guarantee any particular ending, but it can completely change the choices people make. And today, your soulmate decided they would rather understand the truth than continue living inside an assumption. Stay with this until the final moment, because there is one last piece behind their sudden change of heart. Something was said to them today, one simple sentence, that made them immediately remember you and question the decision they had been protecting for so long. They have replayed that sentence again and again, and every time they do, the same thought follows. I need to tell them what happened. What that sentence revealed, and why it connected so powerfully to you, is where this story turns next. Something your soulmate heard today has been echoing in their mind ever since, and strangely, it was not even said about you. That is what made the moment so unexpected. Someone casually said, sometimes you understand the value of a connection only when you stop looking at what went wrong and finally notice what was real. Your soulmate became unusually quiet. Your name immediately entered their thoughts. Don't skip, because what happened inside their mind after that changed the entire meaning of today. They remembered one particular moment between you when they had focused completely on what was missing instead of recognizing what was actually there. They remembered expecting certainty when both of you were still figuring things out. They remembered judging the situation by one confusing chapter instead of looking at the entire story. And suddenly they wondered whether they had allowed one misunderstanding to become bigger than everything that came before it. that question would not disappear. Then another thought arrived. What if you had been waiting for them to understand something that you never knew how to explain? Something huge is waiting for you, because your soulmate did something they had avoided for a long time. They stopped defending their old conclusion and allowed themselves to reconsider it. For the first time, they were not asking, "Why didn't this happen differently?" They were asking, "What did I fail to understand?" And that question led them directly toward a truth they were not prepared to face. Stay till the end, because this is where the pieces begin connecting. Your soulmate remembered a small detail about the way you behaved during an important moment. At the time, they thought you were stepping back because you cared less. Today they wondered if you stepped back because you cared enough not to force anything. That difference may sound small, but to them it changed everything. Suddenly, memories began reorganizing themselves. Your silence no longer automatically meant indifference. Your patience no longer looked like uncertainty. Even the moments when you seemed distant started carrying another possible explanation. Don't skip now, because your soulmate realized something even bigger. They may have been waiting for you to prove something while never giving you the chance to understand what they actually needed. And if both people were waiting for clarity from the other, then perhaps the silence between you was never the answer. Perhaps it was simply an unfinished conversation. That realization surprised them because it meant the future might not be as decided as they once believed. They had spent so much time thinking the chapter was already written that they never considered whether both of you had been holding different versions of the same story. And then came the moment that truly changed today. Your soulmate imagined speaking to you again, not replaying old confusion, not demanding explanations, but simply asking the questions they should have asked before. The idea felt different now. More mature. More honest. They realized that what they want most is not some perfect answer, they want to know what was actually true. Something huge is waiting for you, because one question now sits above all the others. What if I misunderstood the person who mattered because I was interpreting everything through my own uncertainty? That thought has stayed with them. And there is something else. While remembering you, they suddenly recalled one sentence you once said, a sentence they barely noticed at the time. Today, those words returned with an entirely new meaning. Your soulmate finally understood what you may have been trying to communicate beneath them. Stay a little longer, because those words connect directly to the reason they now want to tell you what happened today. They are beginning to believe